Welcome to the Play Review with me, Douglas Schatz. Hello and welcome to the Play Review. I'm delighted to be joined again today by Jodi to review Romeo and Juliet at the Almeida in London. Welcome back, Jodi. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. Thank you for having me back.
I think with this being your third visit, we may be reaching the point where we have to admit that we are a bit of an item.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's official now.
And agree to change our status to co-presenters. How does that sound? I hope I'm not being too presumptuous.
That's lovely. I'll take that. Thank you.
Great. So as I said today, we are reviewing Romeo and Juliet at the Almeida, which is directed by Rebecca Frecknall, who is the hottest director in town these days, I would say. Her most recent credits include A Streetcar Named Desire with Paul Mescal and Patsy Ferran, which also started life at the Almeida, before transferring to the West End earlier this year. As an associate director at the Almeida, she has previously directed The Duchess of Malfi, Three Sisters, and Summer and Smoke, all of which have been great. And she has also won an Olivier Award as Best Director for her innovative production of Cabaret in the West End. She's known for her stripped-down, modern takes on classic titles, and as we will talk about, her Romeo and Juliet is no exception. The show stars Toheeb Jimoh as Romeo. Fans of Ted Lasso, of which I am one, will recognize Toheeb as the sweet Sam Obisanya in Ted Lasso. And Juliet is played by Isis Hainsworth, who will be known to many for appearances in the BBC series Red Rose and the Netflix film Metal Lords, though she was acting on stage in the West End at the age of 17. So I was very much looking forward to this production, hoping that Frecknall would make the play more contemporary and urgent. Jodi, you saw it last night, I believe. What do you think? Was it that?
I did. It was that. It really was that. It's not my favourite Romeo and Juliet of all the Shakespeares, and I was sort of gird my loins a little bit to be prepared for how long I'm going to have to sit through it and the inevitability of it all and the preposterous yet dramatic ending. I just thought it cracked on a pace and it was great. I was really pleased that I went. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yes, I think the pace is an important part of it, isn't it? It's judiciously cut down so that I feel like we lost much of the tedious stuff between adults in the family that impede the lovers' progress. And the focus is more, therefore, on the couple as the center of the play. And the whole thing has a relentless inevitability about where it's heading as a result, too. The scenes flow one after the other seamlessly, and Frecknall very cleverly, I think at one point, overlaps scenes where Juliet and Romeo are devising their separate plots with Friar Lawrence. I hope I'm remembering this right.
Yeah.
Which not only incidentally speeds everything up, but works thematically as well. It underscores their enforced separation and the tragic mechanics of the plot that we know are destined to misfire. So I think the pace is fantastic. It's 2 hours straight through.
Yeah, 2 hours straight through, and it flows beautifully, one scene into the other. She did this as well in A Streetcar Named Desire, with the actors sitting off when they weren't in the action. She took it a step further in this one, and when characters weren't engaged in the action, sometimes they would just deanimate and fall to the floor like lifeless puppets, which in a way sort of, a lot of those characters do die towards the end, and from the very beginning they lie lifeless. So I thought that was just so clever. It worked again thematically as well as to serve the pace and to serve the story.
That reminds me of the choreography, of course, because the staging is enlivened by the music, isn't it? Particularly, of course, the propulsive theme of Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet, which is just an irresistible, wonderful piece. And there are several balletic dance sequences, which I thought were great. The show opens, in fact, with one of those, which to different music could be West Side Story, which, of course, tells the same story, and I'm sure is deliberate evocation of West Side Story.
It has to have been deliberate because that's the first thing you think of. And it's so well done as well. It's so contemporary, it's so modern and muscular. And, really, it's not a gentle opening. You're straight in from that dance, straight into the fight.
That's right. And of course, the movement's very effective at other points, I think, in evoking the Capulets' party, for example, and then the fight between the men, the youthful gangs, which is another powerful feature of the production, isn't it? The young men are, in essence, teenage street gangs in casual modern dress, who end up casually conducting these knife fights and getting into these killings. There's almost a kind of randomness and pettiness about this tragedy when you look at it from that perspective, that these could just be contemporary urban gangs.
Yeah, absolutely. Hanging around, trying to get their sense of supremacy in their corner of the world. And the violence was casually initiated.
Yeah.
Like they were looking for something to punctuate the day, and there's a bit of drama, a bit of excitement, and a way to do it. And yeah, it felt very believable. I felt for once that the love story between the two of them felt real as well, because you're so right, because it stripped away all that other extraneous stuff. Romeo and Juliet were speaking or engaging for most of the play. You connect with them and you root for them, and it's even sadder when they're torn asunder and you know where it's going to go.
You get a very strong sense, don't you, that of the perspective of the youth and the generation gap going on here.
Yeah.
Because it is, again, one of the great strengths, I think, of the production, and how vividly the youthfulness of the gangs and of Romeo and Juliet is conveyed, because they're very young. I mean, Juliet looks like a schoolgirl.
Yeah.
She's dressed like one, which I think was slightly a mistake. I don't think it was that flattering. She's literally wearing a short skirt and blouse. It could be a school uniform most of the time. Whereas he gets to wear a sexy silk shirt.
He looked gorgeous.
He did. The point is their youth and their wonderful performances that evoke that youth, the intensity and the naivety. And actually also helps, as you say, with their love, because I've always had as a rational adult, one always has a question about the impetuosity of their racing to elope after a single night, or just meet and risking everything. And you're thinking, really, come on, hold on, as one would if you were a parent, of course. But the love scenes are really tender and convincing. The alternating poetry of the balcony scene I thought was beautiful. Yeah, it really sings the love scenes between them, I think. And as you say, the focus on them as the center of the play works really powerfully.
Yeah. And I felt that her Juliet was a teenage girl I recognized.
Yeah.
Coming into her young womanhood, simultaneously very sure of herself and her opinions and her point of views, and totally insecure and uncertain and second guessing herself even as she spoke, and being surprised at what comes out of her own mouth. She played it in a little bit of a kooky, but not cutesy way. You could imagine her being the slightly weird, offbeat one at school that maybe didn't have that many close friends or close girlfriends to talk about with things. And she has this connection with this boy and she barely knows what to do with it. I thought that was really plausible to me.
Yeah, she's a combination of sort of teenage defiance, but also you could see times where she was actually scared as well, particularly later on when things become really serious. What did you make of Jack Ridderford's portrayal of Mercutio?
Oh, I did like that. I am always marred by the fact that I know people think Mercutio is the role of the play. I don't love that part personally. I think he did the Queen Mab speech. I thought that was very well delivered. I liked his sort of louche, slightly as if he was on drugs, but not totally off it. I liked his way. He has a very powerful stage presence, doesn't he? I saw him in Jerusalem and it was the same. So I did feel like he was believable as someone who could do something impetuous and dangerous.
Definitely. I thought it was a rather eccentric characterization, as you say, though it suggested something maybe that he was slightly unhinged.
Yeah, it did.
Or you say on some kind of drug, and therefore very capable of unpredictable behavior, including dangerous rage, which of course happens, and a very uneasy presence in the gang. I think they were all wary of him as well because of this unpredictability.
Yes.
And that made sense too. It was slightly weird. It was discomforting, but also not entirely successfully, I think, but much of it was. Was there, I wasn't really sure, but was there any hint of sexual attraction between him and Romeo, do you think?
Yeah, tiny bit. It's often in modern interpretations played that way. There was definitely a moment I felt more Mercutio towards Romeo than otherwise, as if there had been something played with in the past, but Romeo had shrugged it off, but Mercutio still felt for him. That was a bit of a sense that I got. And that kind of led into them tussling and all rolling around on the ground as the nurse comes in to deliver her missive from Juliet. And it's so funny the way Romeo sort of recovers. Going, oh, I looked like I was a small boy before, but no, I am indeed a man. And you can give me the message. It was just like that typical when you have a 15 to 17-year-old boy in the house, one moment a man and a bloke, and the next minute a 9-year-old boy.
Yes.
And I thought he played that. I just thought he was spectacularly well cast.
He was. I think Mercutio, I think maybe it's a hint of jealousy in there as well, perhaps, that Romeo's not paying as much attention to him and them.
Yeah, definitely. That came through very strongly, I thought.
And you're right. I thought the Queen Mab speech was good because in a way he was delivering it as if he was making it up as he goes along. And of course, it's very familiar to us. So that's the best way to do it, I suppose. So we've talked about the focus on the youth. But actually, some of the scenes with the adults were surprisingly powerful. I thought Jamie Ballard as Capulet was shockingly brutal in disowning his daughter, and made all the more terrible, of course, by Lady Capulet's compliance. So to our 21st century ears, the father's assumption of control over his daughter is hard to watch, as is the entitlement that Paris displays as well. I had forgotten some of that attitude from him.
Yeah.
So you're really very much reminded of the complete and merciless grip of the patriarchy.
Yes.
It's scary to behold, really.
It is scary to behold. And it's in the language as well. She is her father's possession.
Yeah.
You are mine to give, and I will gift you to whom I choose, is the sense of it. And it is really shocking to hear that. I thought that Paris was well cast as well, and he delivered it as a slightly undeserving, unsavory, not quite as... I know sometimes he can be a bit too... I thought they were going to play him as a sort of Grimmer Wormtongue type awful character, but it didn't quite go that far. But you definitely, compared to the Romeo that she was with, I mean, what a tragic outcome that would have been for her.
Yes, you're right. There was a whiff of unsavoriness about him. And it's partly to do with the entitlement, I think.
Yeah.
And also what was interesting, having said all that about Capulet's insistence that he has the right as the father, actually, you also get that is his role in the time. And he is devastated and heartbroken by his not being able to realize what his role is, which is to marry his daughter well.
Yes.
So you can ultimately have some understanding, if not sympathy, for his perspective in that regard.
Yeah, that's true. And just reflecting back on the Paris character, I think one of the struggles that I have is that I can never see past the equivalent character that Colin Firth played in Shakespeare in Love. When she's always praying, and we know that she's been in the room with her Romeo/Will Shakespeare. So I always get pulled out of it briefly for a moment, remembering that. So I have to kind of remind myself to be back in the room in this particular play. While we're with the older characters, I thought their friar stole the show. I loved him. Again, I felt like, how you're saying with the Queen Mab speech, it felt like it was occurring to him as he spoke. I felt like all that speech was delivered just so very naturally, and his desire to help both of them felt very natural. And also he was very entertaining in his exasperation with Romeo, like, oh, you've forgotten Rosaline already, okay.
Yes.
And the storytelling was so clear. I think that's my big takeaway from all of this. It hit all of the main storytelling points, and you didn't have to fight to hear it or to remember what was going on. And that's not just from familiarity with the story. I think she did that very well.
That's true. And actually, that part can be somewhat thankless when I think about it, Friar Lawrence, but he wasn't. He was entertaining. And I had the sense, again, that he was just reacting and making up the plans on the spur of the moment.
Yes.
Which, of course, end up in tragedy. Speaking of the tragedy, it's all the more poignant and frustrating, of course, as these things are, when, it's the little details that just go wrong that end up with such a disproportionate result. Although, you also think, boy, you're taking a big risk here with this plan. But anyway.
Yeah. It's like, are you sure? Do you not want to rethink this?
Yeah. Which brings us towards the end. I thought, what you thought, that the death scenes in the crypt were the best I've ever seen. They were about as real as stage death can get.
Yeah.
Making it feel like a real visceral tragedy rather than some romantic one. The poison, for example, Romeo takes induces horrible, painful contortions in the body. It would not be a nice or necessarily quick way to go. And Juliet, she needs to take some time to gird herself psychologically to stab herself. She demonstrates, in fact, how difficult it would be to actually attack oneself hard enough to penetrate your own body, to kill yourself with a knife. So all that comes across really vividly.
Yeah, it really did. And again, to the timing and the whole pace of the piece, I thought it was beautiful that you saw he's taken the poison, she's lying on the very effective thing behind him. And you start to see her toes moving a little, her feet moving. You go, oh, don't take it. She's waking up. She's waking up. And that you can have that thought when you know how it's going to end, but you can still have that thought is just a bit of genius, really. And then she wakes as he's still alive.
Yes.
And it takes her a moment to realize what's happened and that she's going to lose him. And her cradling his head in her lap was the most moving I think I've ever seen that portrayed. It was the most moved I've been seeing that happen.
The reverse also happens. As he is dying in the last throes of having taken the poison, as you say, we see her body begin to twitch. And then I think he kisses her lips, and you just wonder, does he have some momentary glimpse that she's not dead before he dies?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even more terrible.
Even more terrible, yes. It was even more pointless.
And there was also the great moment, I thought, where you see her being terrified of being trapped in the crypt, right? I mean, she's a young girl, and this whole plan of sealing her in this place, you know, it would be terrifying to be in her shoes at that point. And in the spirit of shortening the play and retaining the focus on the young people, I also like the fact that Frecknall disposed of anything else after the death. So I went back this morning and looked at the text, and, you know, inevitably the adults arrive and have these speeches of woe, and there's all that kind of tidying up that Shakespeare does at the end of the play, which is usually so boring. She just gets rid of all that. And that's brilliant too.
Yeah, it is brilliant. I definitely agree, because that's the end of the play. And they did it so beautifully. You know, the back wall of the Almeida Theatre, that bare brick wall. And as she's been laid out and so on, the rest of the cast are lighting tiny candles all the way up the walls and all around the stage. And it really did effectively, with these flickering candles, turn it into this crypt. It was so cleverly done.
It is a beautiful visual image or setting, isn't it?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And actually, the other characters are still there. And then at the end, they just arrive silently like ghosts, including the dead Tybalt and Mercutio. And that's also very effective, I thought.
Yeah, it's very effective. Oh, yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, the little echoes of the memories in the past just in the background. Yeah, that was very beautifully done. I felt, whilst it was right to stop it then, I still had a little moment, this is how conditioned we are, a little moment of feeling a bit robbed of those last lines.
Do you?
Yeah, just those closing lines. And never was there a tale of more woe than that of Juliet and her Romeo. That little couplet, I know it's twee, and I just felt a little bit like the full stop was gone. And it took the audience a long time to give their applause, and I think because they're very affected by it. But I also do think there was a little bit of, are we done?
Is it over? Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah. Well, I'm with them. I quite like an uncertain ending like that. And if you took a step back and had those lines in second, then you are taking a step back.
You are. That's right. You pulled out of it.
You are pulled out of it. And I don't think you should do that. And in fact, at the risk of immodesty, as you know, I've just finished directing A Doll's House at our local theater. And on the last night, you know, the play ends with the slamming of the door as Nora exits. Mm-hmm. And we have Helmer, her husband, left bereft on the stage. And we held the light for, 2 beats and then dissolved. That the audience didn't react for some time. And I'm thinking, it's over, guys.
Yes.
Do you get it? And I'm hoping they were just knocked out and they were still in that moment. But you never know.
You know, I think so. One of my friends at Putney Arts Theatre said to me that it's the greatest compliment because the audience are processing it, they're taking their moment, and then they're giving their appreciation. So it's a measure of the impact. So I would take that away from it.
I like to think that was true, Jodi, but you're very kind to say so. Thank you.
Can we just touch very quickly on the opening?
Sure.
One thing I do love about Romeo and Juliet is as you're waiting for the curtain to rise, you know that line's coming. Two houses, both alike, and it's not said. And at first I was a bit, oh, and I was like, oh no, this is really great. I love the way she's done this. There was a fire curtain, what we thought was a fire curtain at the front of the stage, wasn't there?
Mm-hmm.
It was rough hewn, looked like a sort of sandy, cementy sort of finish. And as it opened one by one, the actors slowly came up and turned their back to the audience and put their hands against it as if to be pushing this wall, which then, of course, they do. And the words are projected onto it in white letters, that opening scene. And when you get to the 2 hours traffic of this stage, they push that wall down. And it magically becomes that square that is the stage. And they step onto it and the action begins. That was smart.
Isn't it smart? Creating the stage on which the 2 hours of this play will be enacted.
That we see it just pivot like that. It gave you a sense of danger. Like, oh, straight away I was in this sense of jeopardy. And then you're in the fight with more jeopardy. So it was effective as well as a very different way to do things.
And actually, I think completely effective throughout this production. She has a very clear and strong vision and delivers it beautifully. And so did the cast. I think It's a great success. I would be very surprised if it doesn't transfer, to be honest.
Yeah, likewise.
How long has it got to run?
To the 29th of July.
So you still have a chance, although it's more than likely sold out, but perhaps it will transfer. If it does, go and see it because you won't be disappointed. It's one of the best, as you say at the top, not my favorite Shakespeare play, but I think differently about it now.
Yes, likewise.
Jodi, what are you seeing next?
I'm seeing Swell at the Orange Tree Theatre next week, which I'm excited about. And I really, really, really want to see Accidental Death of an Anarchist, and I haven't got tickets for that one yet.
Oh, you must, because I just recorded a new episode of the Play Podcast on Accidental Death of an Anarchist. It is currently playing at the Theatre Royal Haymarket. I had the chance to talk with Tom Basden and Daniel Raggett, the writer and director of this new adaptation. The show is fabulously funny and scathingly satirical, and a fantastic performance by Daniel Rigby, which you just have to see to believe. So it was a great conversation. I do recommend the show. Great to see you, Jodi.
And you too.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time on the Play Review. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear what you think. So please visit patreon.com/theplaypodcast to share your views on this production or any other play that you've seen. See you next time.